Good evening. I'm George Herbig, Chief Forecaster here with Weather Now, Kentucky. We did go live a little bit earlier than I said we would, so I'm going to give it a couple minutes before we get started. Of course, as you're coming into the broadcast, whether you're on Facebook or YouTube, tap the share button at the bottom portion of your screen. And if you're on Facebook, you can share it on your news feeds. That way, your friends and family can view it. Everyone can get up to date on what to expect for Tuesday. I will quickly say before we dive into this, it does still look like there's a few questions that need to be answered. Again, I know it's not what people want to hear, but that's the God's honest truth, is that there are still a couple details that need to be ironed out that probably won't be ironed out until the early morning hours on Tuesday. But of course, we'll let you guys know that. Right now in this broadcast, what we're going to show you is our current forecast, the National Weather Service's current forecast, as well as the current model data that's coming through here. So you can kind of paint a picture of what the couple different scenarios are going to set up as. I also want to mention that I know before we get in here that there's going to be a lot of folks that ask, hey, is this going to be like Friday? Is this like Friday? I think it is important to remember that Friday, what we went through on Friday for a lot of folks in Kentucky, is going to go down in the history books. All right, it was one of the biggest outbreaks in a while when it comes in terms of overall severe weather. Maybe not tornadic, but overall severe weather. So you have to keep that in mind. So when you're comparing any system to what happened on Friday, the answer is almost always going to be no. However, I will say that on Tuesday, it does present its own respectable threat. So we'll break down what that threat is, where the zones are that we feel are most vulnerable, and kind of explain things that we're looking for, what may change, what may not change. I also will say that after Tuesday's event, our weather turns much calmer. We actually have a cold front coming in as a result of all of this, and it'll actually be a pretty pleasant back half of May. So whatever plans that you may have that are you're waiting on, again, I think starting Wednesday through the back half of May, it looks a lot more tamed. We'll keep a couple of rain shower chances, but overall, it looks like a very pleasant end to May after this event on Tuesday. So I just want to kind of go ahead and put all that out there before we get started. Again, once we see some of the shares go up, I kind of know on videos like this when we get to 50 shares, it's time to go. Again, that's just a metric that I use to kind of say when it's time to go. Lisa, hello, how are you? Doc, what's up, my friend? Biker, hello. Again, I will get to some of your questions here in a moment. I haven't even gotten through the analysis yet. I will get to your questions here in just a few moments. Again, I will let you guys know. By the way, I do have an update on the Somerset to London, Kentucky tornado. The Somerset one is pretty much going to officially be between an EF2 and an EF3, probably on the EF2 side. And then the London one is very close to EF4. It is very close. Last thing I heard, I'm not going to spill too much. Last stuff that I heard is that between EF3, EF4, it's very, very close. The reason that this tornado is probably not going to be rated higher or as high as a lot of folks think that it was going to be rated is because, if we're being honest, okay, don't shoot me, I'm the messenger. The construction out there in southeastern Kentucky and overall in Kentucky is quite poor. Okay, so again, it doesn't take a whole lot for some of these lesser violent tornadoes, if you will, to maybe cause violent level damages. The strongest tornado by far so far at their current ratings was from Morganfield, Kentucky at 155 mile per hour. The London one is very, very close to it. Very, very close. Also, we'll say Russell County's tornado was upgraded to an EF3 rather than an EF2, which is a part of the same supercell that eventually went into Somerset and London, Kentucky. So that's the updates that we have from Friday. Again, a lot of those surveys are preliminary, so we'll come back to those at a later time and try to make you guys a very nice, fine graphic. Also, there were 2 tornadoes in Hopkinsville, or Christian County, I should say. And then there was one somewhere else out there to the west. I can't put my finger on it right now, but again, when everything gets kind of finalized or more toward finalized, we will make a map and of course, all those nice graphics and show you guys where everything happened. All right. Again, a lot of those surveys take time, especially for your more violent tornadoes. So what I want to show you now, and again, I'll get into everyone's questions here. We'll do a light Q&A, if you will. Again, I think there's still a lot of questions that need to be answered for Tuesday. Okay, so we're not going to get into where'd my camera go? Not my camera, but I was about to say, I know it's working. Oh, you know what? Here, give me just 1 second. I want to do this before I forget. Copy. No, it's there. Why did I'm not seeing things, am I? That camera did not pop up at first, right? I'm not seeing things, am I? Oh my goodness. Okay. Anyway, back into the video. That just threw me all the way off. So here's our forecast for Tuesday. And again, I want to break this down and show you the model data and show you everything that we have that we kind of put into making this decision, okay? Our forecast does look a little bit than the SPCs. That's why you see up here in the top right, this is a WNK forecast, not SPC. Those are two different forecasts, very similar in overall thinking, but I think our zones are a little bit different. And again, I will explain why, and this is why I think it's important to have different scenarios to kind of play off of, okay? I think there's still a lot of answers, or a lot of questions. Again, I'll say it again, there's a lot of questions about Tuesday still kind of up in the air. Why is my browser not showing up? Thank you. Okay. So, speaking of the SPC, before we go into that, I'll show you there is a little current baby sale, if you will, down here in southwestern Kentucky, if you will, Russellville or Dareville area. Probably going to head up toward Bowling Green, Scottsville area. These should stay non-severe because there is not a whole lot of wind energy out there, but I wouldn't be too totally shocked if they try to get up close toward... Here, let's do this. Let's turn on the special weather statements and see... Okay, so there... Wait a second. It's in here. Turn that on. Is there a special weather? So there's not. So it's not even close yet. I wouldn't be too terribly surprised if these get close to severe level, but again, I don't think it will. I'm just saying I don't think it'll be too surprised. Eventually, you may see this, if you can kind of use your imagination, you may see a line kind of develop right here, very weak broken line of showers tonight. Again, could get very close to severe level. I don't think it will, but again, with the way that the weather's been lately, I have to say that there's a chance. Again, I don't think it will, though. But that's your current radar, so we're going to turn that off for now. Nothing too big tonight, guys. I really don't. As you can see here, they've already kind of downtrended. They backed off. There was a slight risk here. Now, your slight is in your yellow, by the way. The slight risk is only for far west Kentucky, and even that's probably a stretch. Okay, and that's for tonight. As for Tuesday, here's what those zones look like. And this enhanced risk was brought up into Kentucky earlier today in this afternoon's update. And I know you're going to ask me, George, can they expand it anymore? It all depends on where the warm front goes tomorrow. Genuinely, that's the flat out answer. Tomorrow's forecast is simple yet complex. Okay, we know that storms are going to occur along and south of the warm front. Wherever that warm front sets up at is where it's going to determine also how much rain we see in the early morning hours as well as the early afternoon hours is going to impact what we see Tuesday night. The difference between Friday and today, or Friday and Tuesday, I should say, is on Friday, I'm going to be quite honest with you guys. It really did not matter how much rain we saw in the morning or early afternoon on Tuesday, or on Friday. I'm sorry, my days all mixed up here. I'm still stuck on Friday in my head. It did not matter. Okay, there was so much fuel at play for us on Friday. It really, unless it just rained all day long, it really would not have mattered. All right. As for Tuesday, there is still enough energy at play, but it's barely enough. So if we see hours and hours of rainfall on Tuesday morning, going into Tuesday early afternoon, we could see a downtrend for the evening line, which is technically going to be your strongest line. Okay, so there is some bust potential tomorrow, whereas on Friday, I know I kind of told you guys what there was a little bit, but there really wasn't a whole lot. Okay, on Tuesday, there is some bust potential. All right, so I just want to put that out there before we go into all the model data, before we go into all the forecasts, before we go into all the data that we're going to show you guys. I just want to say there is some bust potential tomorrow if we see just hours and hours and hours of thunder showers. Okay, and again, I will show you guys that. But as of right now, there is a 3 out of 5 risk for basically along the parkways and just around the parkways to point south. So pretty much your southern half of Kentucky. If you draw Kentucky or draw a line through the middle of Kentucky, your bottom half there. A 2 out of 5 risk pretty much blankets the rest of the state. Okay, and I don't want the people in the 2 out of 5 risk to say, oh, we're not in the 3 out of 5, we're good to go. No, a 2 out of 5 is still an elevated chance to see severe weather, by the way. Okay. As for your wind outlook, there is a 45% chance, which is quite a high on the metric there. As you can kind of see up here, you really can't see it actually. But it is I believe, the second highest that you can get. So it's 45% wind risk that does go from London to Corbin and Williamsburg to Jellicoe, back over toward Bowling Green, Scottsville, and then a 30% chance in this red, basically along the enhanced zone that you saw for Clinton, Mayfield, Murray, Hopkinsville, Oak Grove. Now, I will say this, okay? If they feel like there is enough evidence to issue a significant wind risk, which would be a hatched area, as you can kind of see, like, for example, on this tornado risk map, the hatched area. If they feel like that is the case for the wind as well, you will see a level 4 out of 5 moderate risk issued once again for the southern half of Kentucky on Tuesday. Okay, just like we had on Friday. I don't know if it's quite there yet. Again, we really have to wait. And this answer sucks. I'm not gonna lie to you, but we really have to wait to see what the data and what the storms do on the early hours of Tuesday morning. That is really the time frame to watch to understand what may happen Tuesday evening. All right. By the way, yellow is a 15% risk for those of you that were going to ask about that. Okay. As for your tornado risk, it looks like this. Basically, along that enhanced area, it is a 10% hatched significant risk. Basically, meaning there's a 10% chance of a significant tornado occurring within 25 miles of a point. Also, there's a 10% chance of any level tornado occurring within 25 miles of a point. Your brown, which is pretty much the rest of the state, is a 5% risk. I know you're going to ask me, George, can these maps change? They absolutely can. Especially, I think, for the northwestern side of the state. I don't think we're paying enough attention to the Morganfield, Owensboro, maybe Brandenburg areas very close up there. Basically, along the Ohio River, I think you're going to see a bit more intensity there than advertised, because we know that when you get right along those warm fronts, when you get right up next to a warm front, those storms can get a little bit more aggressive. And people are always like, how's that happening? And we still don't adjust to that in the weather world. When you get right up next to a boundary like that, it can get very, very wicked, very, very fast. So I wouldn't be too terribly shocked to see some of these higher zones get pulled a little bit further into northwestern Kentucky. As far as like the Lexington, Cynthiana area, Mount Olivet, Danville, Berea, it could be expanded up there, but I don't think it will be, because again, out there, I think we're looking at more of the hail and the damaging winds. Okay. As for that hail that we just mentioned there, pretty much a 15% yellow risk along I-75 to points west, much like the forecast that was out for Friday. The difference is, I don't think you're looking at as large of hail potential as you were on Friday. We could see some reports of golf ball, maybe a couple of reports up to tennis ball or lime-sized hail, but I don't think you're looking at as widespread of that crazy hail that we were talking about, which we actually really didn't end up seeing a whole lot of on Friday. We ended up seeing more of the wind and tornadoes, but out here to the west, they absolutely saw a gigantic hail, softball-sized hail on Friday. So those are your outlooks from the SPC. You can see it's a little bit different than our forecast. Our forecast has the highest zone pretty much located from, unfortunately, from London to Bowling Green back over toward Hopkinsville and then on to the south. Still a respectable 3 out of 5 risk, basically along the parkways a little bit up toward Lexington, Moorhead, Pikeville. The reason we extended this risk up to the north a little bit versus the SPC is because I think, once again, once you get along that warm front boundary, like I just talked about, once you get right up on that boundary, you can get some sneaky action to occur. So just take that for what it is. A 2 out of 5 risk from us in that purple area, basically Louisville, Owenston, and Maysville. And that white risk is a 1 out of 5 risk, where I think there's just going to be, you're just going to be just to the north of that warm front, basically, is what I'm thinking there. So that's how ours breaks down versus the SPC. It's very close, very close. The only difference really being, I think, we're not paying attention enough to the boundary and what it can possibly do. All right, let's go into the model data here in a second. But before we do that, of course, we have to pay the bills here. These companies allow us to be here for you guys 24/7. So this only takes about 70 seconds, by the way. So make sure you just stick around here with us. We'll get to some of your questions at the end, and of course, show you the model data so you can see exactly what's happening from the models. All right. FBI Buildings has over a half a century of experience in renovating, remodeling, and rebuilding any residential and commercial building. They also can give your pole barns new life. If any disaster does hit, be sure to go to FBIbuildings.com for a free quote. Hyper Roofing has experts on their staff that work with insurance companies and can talk their language. We know that sometimes when it comes to disasters, that insurance companies and roofing companies and you all may not have points that align. So having that on your side is super important, at least to me. They also use GAF. They're only one of 12 roofing companies statewide that are able to give an additional 15-year wind warranty at no extra cost to you. They're also Better Business Bureau accredited. All these things to me are super important when I'm thinking about the big thing that's on top of my house protecting me from all these storms. Make sure that you're being proactive about it. Reach out to Hyper Roofing. They not only serve Hardin County, but the surrounding counties in Kentucky. To me, that's who we trust. And so I feel very confident, Tony, that you could trust them as well. Thank you so much to Hyper for their partnership with us, and we hope that you consider using Hyper Roofing and being proactive in keeping your family and your shelter safe. Right Implement has over 15 locations throughout all of Kentucky and making it convenient for you to go shop with them. They're our longest standing sponsor, and we appreciate them so much for their support. They have so many things from outdoor apparel to outdoor vehicles to things to help you on your farm. A Right Implement is such a phenomenal company and someone that you really want to support in Kentucky.
Ah, it's deer season.
Already? Nice knowing you. We gotta hide.
No, not that deer season. Deer season. It's that time of year when you can get $3,000 off at an authorized John Deere dealer.
A deer season that saves bucks?
That's right.
It's deer season, now through June 2nd.
Thank you to all those folks. And for some reason, the video did update there, the new one that we have issued. So I'm going to go ahead and just give you a quick message from Once Upon a Child as well. New Baby Club. Of course, members receive monthly offers, to see the store, to learn how to join. And be a part of the New Baby Club. Their May offers one free apparel item, $5 or less, sizes 0 to 18 months with a purchase. So again, Once Upon a Child is where we take Samuel for everything, by the way. So Once Upon a Child, Elizabethtown, Plato's Closet, Elizabethtown, and of course, Once Upon a Child, Outer Loop is of course a part of our sponsors as well. So I wanted to go ahead and give them a little quick ad right there because again, for some reason, the video that we updated has not deposited correctly into our broadcast software for some reason, whatever reason. So I wanted to make sure you gave you that message from them as well. And of course, that's where we take Samuel for everything. So hopefully you guys can support them as well because I think it makes a lot of things more affordable for new families and established families as well. So again, thank you to Once Upon a Child and Plato's Closet in Elizabethtown and Once Upon a Child on Outer Loop in Louisville. Thank you guys again for your sponsorship. All right, so here is the latest model data. I will kind of go ahead and zoom this into the local view here. You guys know, as always, I will show you two different models to kind of look at. So let's just go ahead and scoot this up toward right now. And again, you can see that the model's trying to pick up those showers that you're currently seeing on the radar down there in southwestern Kentucky. But it quickly fizzles them out. And then by tonight in the late overnight hours, we might see some rowdy thunderstorms once again enter West Kentucky. These could produce a marginal severe risk out there in Western Kentucky. So just a heads up that around 2 to 5 a.m. in West Kentucky could see some rowdy thunderstorms producing maybe some marginal hail and maybe some brief damaging winds out there, but shouldn't be anything too insanely wild for you guys. You guys are used to much worse out there. Advancing this forward to around sunrise on Tuesday. Some rowdier groups of thunderstorms here, as you can see in the red and yellow and red and purple out here. So again, some rowdier thunderstorms, not anything I think going to be too crazy. Could see some brief hailers as well as some brief damaging wind gusts. I don't think it's going to be anything too crazy. All right. Advancing this forward, maybe some popcorn, what I call popcorn showers down here in south central and eastern Kentucky. But then by about noon-ish, or right around 10 a.m. to noon-ish, most folks should clear out in the state, according to this model. Again, we have to wait and see exactly how that's going to evolve. I think you're looking at a couple of different scenarios, and again, I will break those down in just a second. But advancing this forward to the afternoon, you can see some rotating thunderstorms now introducing into the Somerset area after it left Bowling Green and Scottsville, as well as Russellville, and now it's out here, or Russell Springs, I should say. Now it's out here toward the Somerset area, trying to indicate some rotating storms as it heads toward Pikeville. And then back out here is where kind of your more strong to severe storms might actually be. And again, this is why it's messy. It's messy because again, you guys you can kind of look at this with me here. There's a lot of rainfall in this. There is a lot of rainfall. So again, if we see a scenario like this where there's this much rainfall involved with it, it's really hard for me to believe that Kentucky's going to see a massive severe risk. Okay. But if we get a scenario where there's a lot more gaps or a lot more breaks, or there's just straight up not as much rainfall as what the model's trying to show, then we have that severe risk and potentially an all-hazard severe risk to really worry about. All right, so again, advancing this forward to 6 p.m., 7 p.m. or so, and again, does show some rowdier thunder showers, but again, it's really hard for me to believe these are going to be anything too crazy because we just saw so many hours of rainfall. But advancing this forward, that's kind of it. The ARRR model, and if I show the updraft helicity here, which again tries to depict where storms are rotating, it does show a couple of brighter streaks, mainly again from that Somerset cell we were talking about. And it does show a brighter streak out here, but that's pretty much it. All the gray you're seeing in here is not anything too crazy. All right, but the problem is if I go back to an older run and show you this afternoon's run, it's a lot more vibrant. Am I thinking of the right run here? Let me go back one more. yeah, maybe I'm thinking of a different model, but there was something that showed a little bit more vibrancy. All right. And again, it's going to be. I think it's going to be really close. I really do. And again, my gut's telling me that there's going to be some rowdier storms. But again, how much rainfall we see is going to be really key to understanding exactly what we could see in the afternoon and evening. Because again, if we start seeing a whole lot of rainfall in the late morning to early afternoon, well, we're going to be blocked. All the warm air and all that unstable air is going to be blocked down to Tennessee and Alabama and Georgia and all those areas down to our south. So again, it's really going to be up to how the morning evolves, okay? Because if you look at the HRRR here, once again, it shows rain and thunder showers around sunrise. Rain and thunder showers around, going close to the late morning hours. Then a little bit of a break. But then again, it shows all this activity down here to our south, which is going to block that warm air from getting up into Kentucky, okay? So advancing this forward, it does show a little bit of a break, basically a couple hours of a break there. And about 4 to 5 p.m., it does initiate a strong, potentially rotating line of storms out there in western Kentucky. But then by the time they get to central Kentucky, because remember, all of this activity down here has blocked central Kentucky's warm air, it pretty much kills them down. And then by eastern Kentucky, they're mainly just heavier and like hefty rain showers at that point. Okay, and then by about 11 p.m., it's pretty much out of the entire state. So it's not an all-night thing, thankfully. God, I'm tired. So thankfully, it's not like an all-night thing in Tuesday going into Wednesday morning. Whatever happens tomorrow will be done by probably about 10 p.m. All right, just to kind of put that out there. Here's the NAM3K model, and here's what it shows. And this is, again, another one of those short-range models that we look at here. Neither of these models have been perfect. Neither of them have been super terrible either, okay? It does also see a bit of thunderstorm activity in the early morning hours, not as much as the HRRR model, which we know that's usually the case because this model doesn't ever really show as much as the HRRR model, okay? But then those kind of out of here. But the problem is if you look here, there's not a whole lot going on down here in Tennessee, okay? Advancing this forward, it does show some more weak rain showers around, the late morning, early afternoon hours. But once again, those are out of here. There's not a whole lot of blocking to occur. There's not a whole lot of, remember on the other model that we saw, there was so much rainfall. There's genuinely just not a window for warm air to make it into Kentucky. There's not. Okay, so if we see a scenario set up the way the HRRR model, that first model that we looked at, if we see that set up tomorrow, we're not going to see a whole lot of severe weather here. So that's what I'm rooting for personally. But again, even on this model, that early afternoon around here, it does show quite the rotating line by the time it gets past I-65. So again, this is valid for around 3 p.m. Eastern time, 2 p.m. Central time. It does show kind of a broken squall line of storms heading along I-75 and out there toward eastern Kentucky. And then by the time that, the early afternoon or late afternoon, early evening rolls around, does show a long line of storms here, all rotating. And the biggest problem that it shows is supercells in front of the line. Okay, and if we do get a situation where this occurs, this would absolutely be an all-hazard severe risk. And not only that, but it goes all the way up through Kentucky, not just the southern half. Okay, because I'll tell you what, if the supercell like this forms in front of the line, that's a big problem. That's probably going to be a tornadic supercell. Okay, and you also see this one over here. And again, on the back line, you're probably looking at 60 to 75 mile per hour wind gusts, golf ball sized hail, and as well as a couple of tornadoes spinning up on that line there. Advancing this forward to 7 to 8 p.m., we see that line begins to get a bit more messy by the time it gets towards central Kentucky. And then by about 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern time, it does show a bit of rotating storms up there on the northern side, basically along the I-64 corridor. Maybe a couple of rotating storms on the southern side down here toward Bowling Green, maybe Hart County and Campbellsville. And then going out to the east here, it does show the line dying down by the time it gets to Somerset, Moorhead, so on and so forth. And by the time it gets to eastern Kentucky, it's pretty much dead at that point. So here we are, what is this? 16 hours before this event really supposed to start, the main lines anyway. And both of our short-range models show completely different ideas. So again, I just want to kind of show you both of those scenarios. My gut feeling tomorrow tells me that we have to take pretty much an average of these two. I think we're going to see more rain in the morning than this model is showing, okay? But I also don't think we're going to see as much rain as the first model showed. I do think we'll get a brief window, and actually let me find the post from NWS Louisville, because they actually had a pretty good timing graphic that I want to steal from them. See if I can find it. Here it is. Let's see if I can just blow it up there. And of course, it's too big. So let's go ahead and just save the image. We'll take the longer way around. That's fine. Boom, 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 boom. There we go. Okay. So here is the highest severe threat on Tuesday. Again, severe storms or thunderstorms can occur outside of these windows, but these are the windows for the peak severe storms. Okay. So 12 to 4 for Western Kentucky, and these are all Eastern time, by the way. 3 to 7 p.m. for basically West Central Kentucky. 4 to 8 p.m. for Central Eastern Kentucky. 7 to 11 p.m. for Eastern Kentucky. Those again are your peak windows. Does not mean you're going to see storms that entire window that are all going to be crazy biblical ends. That's just a window for the highest peak of the storms. So again, I think you have to take kind of a median or an average of those two models that you looked at, which is again is not the best practice, but just for layman, just for simply speaking here, just for broadcast purposes. Again, I think tomorrow's going to play out a little bit like this because this almost always happens with scenarios like this. Every time we get a storm system from the plains and from the Midwest, it always rains in the morning here. It always rains in the morning here, and sometimes it rains for hours. And sometimes those rain showers can be quite rowdy. Thunder, a little bit of hail, maybe a couple of isolated pockets of damaging winds, so on and so forth. Okay? So I do think there's going to be a period, looks like Cam's moving the camera. I do think there's going to be a period of some strong thunderstorm activity early in the morning hours on Tuesday from West Kentucky to Central Kentucky. Okay? And then by the time lunchtime comes, those should push out toward Eastern Kentucky. And then back out there in West Kentucky, I do think we may see a line of storms ignite and then push east. What exactly is left in the atmosphere after that morning round is not going to be able to be an answer that we can give you guys until, unfortunately, that round of storms is done. And that's just the God's honest truth. Okay, and that's why we haven't seen the risk move too entirely much. Because even the SPC has mentioned, the Storm Prediction Center, the National Weather Service's Storm Prediction Center, even they have mentioned, we really don't know what the morning is going to evolve into. So we really don't know exactly which risk to apply to Kentucky because it's all going to, I'm telling you guys, it's all going to matter how long it storms in the morning and early afternoon hours on Tuesday. And not only in Kentucky, but we have to watch what happens in Tennessee, basically to our south. Because if there's storms happening in Tennessee but not in Kentucky, they can still block the warm air from getting up into our state. So basically, this broadcast is to tell you that there is potential there for an all hazards risk on Tuesday, especially during these peak windows. But we still have some questions on what exactly the morning looks like because the models have been so unreliable. So that's basically what I want to tell you tonight, and tell you also that it's not looking like a Friday system where I think we're looking at 3 or 4 rounds of all producing all hazards of severe weather. Again, Friday is going to go down in the history books, folks. It's not something that we're going to see very, very often around here. So when you're talking about comparing it to other systems, your answer is almost always going to be no. All right, so that's kind of what we're looking at right now. I'll get to a few questions here, but again, I just want to remind you that we have more questions on the scientific side than answers right now. So a lot of your questions, or a lot of the answers to your questions, are going to be very broad and very general. Okay. If worse comes to worse, which counties will be the most vulnerable? I think that's kind of what we based our map off of, this map here. And I think the southern half of Kentucky is most vulnerable. The more north you go, the more closer you're getting to that warm front, so it's not as vulnerable. But you can still, anything up into that warm front is going to be vulnerable. But I think the southern half of Kentucky has more of a chance just because we know it's going to be in that warm zone. I did message them. I have no idea, Stephanie. I don't control those apps. Lauren just basically posted or made an infographic what she could find. Some of these counties are not, for whatever reason, are not making as much of a public push of these apps as they should. Like Hardin County does a great job. Jefferson County does a great job. So on and so forth. But some of these counties make it so darn hard to find the information to sign up for those apps. So, she did what she could. I don't control those apps. We have no influence. We basically just said, hey, here's an alternative source. And those apps are really great if you can figure out how to freaking get into them. How does Florida look? Again, we're not going to get the specific locations. I asked you just look at this map, find your location, and then kind of go off the confidence of that. Again, when we have this many questions about what the morning frame looks like, it's really hard to answer specific location questions because, again, it all comes down to what happens in the morning. Babe, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yes, just there. So again, this one is our forecast. As you can see up there in the top right corner, it says WNK forecast, not SPC. Bowling Green is in our highest zone, again, because we feel most confident that they're going to be in the warm sector. Saucy, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Do you think we should get out of London tomorrow just in case? Again, based upon the pattern that we're in, I think everyone should be a little bit extra cautious tomorrow. Again, just because of the pattern that we're in. Does not mean I think it's going to be a biblical ends type of event, but because of how we've seen storms perform over the last few days, not only in Kentucky, but everywhere, I think everyone's best bet is just be cautious tomorrow, folks. Again, if it comes down to it and you're in a storm shelter and then after the fact you really need to be there, are you hurt any at all by going to that storm shelter and just spending a few hours there? Are you hurt any at all by taking those extra, couple hours to make precautions and make plans? No, you're not. So again, I'd rather you folks do that. I can't explain to you how many stories I heard from London and Somerset where people were completely caught off guard by that storm. And, it's crazy to me because we were live. I know Ryan was live. Everyone was live. But there were still so many people that just were not paying attention or just didn't take the time to precaution. And I'm not saying that's why they got hurt or injured or lost their homes. Again, weather's going to do what the weather wants to do. But if you guys take the time to find a shelter near you, which you can Google for the most part, or contact your local EMA offices and figure that out, or if you take the time to make a plan in your homes or whatever it might be, 9 times out of 10, you're going to be okay. Okay, now there are some storms like we saw in London the other day, or Morganfield, or out there in Marion, Illinois, that are going to wreck your town no matter what you do. But 9 times out of 10, if you take the precautions and just play it safe, I know we have false alarm fatigue in this state. Basically, what that means is, hey, we've had so many people tell us so many things are going to be bad, and it doesn't end up happening bad. But all it takes is you to let your guard down one time, and then boom, it's over. So just treat every storm with respect, and you're going to be okay. I'm between Maysville and Moorhead. Should we draft north to Ohio tomorrow evening? No, I think, again, the more north you go, the better off you are. You might still see some rowdy thunderstorms up there, but I think the more north you are, the better off you are. You're in one of our lowest zones. Are the storms in the morning going to be tornadic for the Bowling Green area? Again, I don't do tornado odds based off of cities. I can tell you that morning round should not be tornadic. Again, I think you're looking at more of the isolated damaging winds, much more marginal risk for severe weather in the morning time frame. It's the afternoon round. If we see some clearing and we see a break in action, that's the round that could be a little bit more problematic. Thank you, Weeping Willow. Would a hotel be safe? Yeah, again, a lot of those hotels, guys, listen, you got to think about it like this. A lot of those hotels, a lot of places don't want to pay any lawsuits out, so they are going to build their buildings halfway decent. Let's just take that for what it is. Yeah, I don't know who made the decision to do the NOAA upgrade in the middle of May. That was probably, I love NOAA, I love NWS, I love all those folks. They're the experts of the industry. But that might be one of the most boneheaded things I've ever heard in my life. And again, I know a lot of offices did disagree with that based upon what I've heard. But again, for a lot of people, it's out of their hands. But that is just one of the most craziest things I think I've ever heard. There's so many safe time frames countrywide that you could do that, and to pick the middle of May is one of the most head scratching decisions I could think of recently. Every NOAA weather radio will be down tomorrow and through Wednesday, from what I know. Again, time frames look like this, guys. Are you doing level 4 because they are the most at risk or because you expect level 4 type of storm? So our maps, that's a good question. Our maps are based off of confidence. So confidence in you're going to see severe weather. The higher that zone, the more likelihood you're going to see severe weather. Okay? Whereas the SPC, their maps are more based off of the severity of the weather mixed with confidence. That's where I try to draw the line with me because I don't want too many people getting confused. When you see so many forecast maps, you can get confused. And so we kind of, our maps are usually based off of confidence. What does the key mean? That's the zones that correlate to the colors. Yeah, Cerise, I really don't know. Basically what it is, from what I know, is that they're upgrading one of their code services or something like one of their clouds. I don't know exactly what it is, but again, I don't think you could have picked a worse time frame to do that. That's again one of the most head scratching decisions I could think of. No. Again, so for the NOAA thing that you guys are talking about, it's just the weather radios. Everything else will still operate 100% functionally. The sirens, them pushing warnings out to your Twitter or whatever it might be. The county emergency apps that we told you guys to download. Again, everything else will be fully functional from what I understand. It's just the weather radios. Again, time frames look like this, folks. And again, I'll post this map on our page along with our newest forecast information. But for now, I do think we want to get running. We've been live for about 37 minutes here. It might be a long day tomorrow, so I don't want to spend too much time on the broadcast. Also, there's going to be new model data coming in here very soon that I want to kind of pay attention to and break down. So again, we'll post all this stuff that we saw on the video here on our pages. Also, this video will be available for playback on both YouTube and Facebook if you did come in here kind of late. But for now, just know it's going to be okay. I think there's two different scenarios at play that we talked about in this broadcast. And again, we'll let you know kind of which scenario we might be leaning to by the time the morning rolls around. I'm George Herbig, Chief Forecaster here with Weather Now Kentucky. Thank you to all of our sponsors for allowing us to be here for you guys 24/7. Thank you to you folks for trusting WNK. And until next time, stay safe, folks.